The Industrial Revolution was not merely a shift in technology or the rise of steam-powered engines, it was a fundamental restructuring of human time. Before the great soot-stained chimneys began to dominate the skylines of Manchester, London, and Glasgow, the rhythm of life was dictated by the sun, the seasons, and the tolling of the village church bell. But as the world moved into the 19th century, time became a commodity that could be bought, sold, and most importantly, measured. The factory whistle became the new heartbeat of the nation, and for the thousands of laborers who poured into the rapidly expanding cities, punctuality was no longer a virtue, it was a matter of survival. Missing a shift by even 15 minutes could result in a docked day's pay, a stern reprimand from a foreman, or in the most desperate of times, immediate dismissal. In this rigid, mechanical world, a unique and peculiar profession emerged to bridge the gap between the chaotic nature of human sleep and the relentless demand of the clock. The knocker-upper. These individuals were the silent sentinels of the morning, walking through the obsidian shadows of the pre-dawn hours, long before the rest of the city stirred. They were often elderly men or women, though sometimes retirees or even local constables looking to supplement their meager earnings, who took upon themselves the heavy burden of human wakefulness. Imagine the scene. It is 4 o'clock in the morning in a cramped industrial district. The air is thick with coal smoke and the lingering chill of a northern winter. A figure emerges from the fog, clutching a long, slender pole made of bamboo or polished wood, its tip sometimes fitted with a metal hook or a soft knob to minimize the damage to the glass. They moved with a practiced, rhythmic grace, navigating the labyrinthine alleys of tenement housing where the brickwork seemed to lean in, whispering of the exhaustion held within. To be a successful knocker-upper was to possess an almost superhuman level of dedication and memory. They were human alarm clocks, but they carried no internal gears or springs. Instead, they relied on their own internal discipline and a series of meticulously planned routes. A knocker-upper had to manage dozens of customers, different addresses, exact schedules, and weekly payments without losing track of a single detail. Today, business owners no longer have to carry all of that information in a notebook or depend entirely on memory. Tools such as invoice1pro.net can help organize customer jobs, appointments, reminders, estimates, invoices, income, expenses, and other important business records in one place. In many ways, the problem is still the same. When people depend on your service, forgetting one appointment can cost both time and money. For the knocker-upper, however, every address and every wake-up time still had to be remembered by hand. They would carry small, tattered ledgers, their pages stained with thumbprints and ink, detailing exactly which window needed a gentle tap at 4:15 and which required a more insistent rapping at 4:45. The relationship between the knocker-upper and their client was one of profound, unspoken trust. The client paid a small weekly fee, usually a few pennies, for the assurance that they would not be left behind by the march of progress. If the knocker-upper failed to appear, the consequences for the worker were immediate and severe. If a weaver in a textile mill arrived late, the machinery would have already been set in motion by others, and the worker would find the gates locked against them. This meant a total loss of income for that day, which for many families living on the edge of poverty was the difference between a warm meal and a cold, empty hearth. The knocker-upper knew this, and that knowledge fueled their trudging steps through the rain, the sleet, and the biting frost. They were the architects of the morning, ensuring that the wheels of industry kept turning, one window tap at a time. As the morning progressed, the city would slowly come to life. The knocker-upper would see the first flickers of candlelight appearing behind the curtains they had just struck. It was a lonely, often thankless existence. They worked in the hours when the world was at its most vulnerable, when the boundary between dreams and the harsh reality of labor was thinnest. They were often mocked by passers-by, or viewed as ghosts in the mist, yet their presence was the only thing standing between a worker and the crushing weight of unemployment. This level of responsibility will feel familiar to anyone who runs a service business today. A missed appointment, forgotten payment, unrecorded expense, or incorrect customer schedule can quickly create larger problems. That is why digital business tools such as invoice1pro.net can be useful for contractors, handymen, construction companies, and other service professionals who need to manage customers, track projects, organize their finances, and keep important information accessible. It can also help people who want a clearer record of their personal income and expenses. But in the narrow streets of industrial Britain, the knocker-upper had no digital calendar, automatic reminder, or customer management system. There was only a route, a list of names, and the responsibility to arrive on time. The tools of the trade were simple but effective. The long poles were often handmade, tailored to the height of the windows on a specific route. Some knocker-uppers used pea shooters, blowing dried peas against the glass with a sharp, percussive sound that was impossible to ignore, but unlikely to shatter the pane. Others used long, flexible rods that could reach the upper stories of Victorian tenements where the poorest workers lived. These individuals were masters of efficiency. They knew the shortcuts through the back alleys, they knew which loose cobblestones to avoid in the dark, and they knew the exact amount of pressure required to wake a person without inciting their rage. It was a delicate balance of service and irritation. If they were too quiet, the worker would sleep through. If they were too loud, the neighbor might throw a chamber pot out the window in a fit of nocturnal fury. The profession thrived for decades, becoming an integral part of the urban fabric. It was a testament to the human need for synchronization in an increasingly fragmented world. Even as the first rudimentary alarm clocks began to appear in the shop windows of the late 19th century, they were expensive, unreliable, and prone to breaking. They could not be wound by a machine, nor could they be trusted to keep perfect time. A mechanical clock might stop, or it might be set incorrectly by a tired hand. But a human knocker-upper was an adaptive, thinking agent of reliability. They could adjust for the weather, they could account for a worker who had been sick the previous day, and they could offer a brief word of encouragement or a nod of solidarity in the grey light of dawn. Yet the tide of history is relentless. As the 20th century approached, the manufacturing of clocks became more refined, and the cost of owning a timepiece plummeted. The mass production of reliable, inexpensive alarm clocks meant that the average worker no longer needed to pay a weekly fee for a human to wake them. The profession of the knocker-upper began to wither, not with a bang, but with the quiet ticking of 1,000,000 bedside clocks. It was a slow obsolescence, a transition from human-centered service to machine-centered reliance. By the time the Second World War had reshaped the world, the knocker-upper had largely vanished, relegated to the pages of history books and the fading memories of the elderly. They left behind a world that had become faster, more automated, and perhaps a little less human in its connections. The tools have changed, but the need to stay organized has not. Whether someone manages a construction company, works independently, provides services to customers, or simply wants to keep better records of personal income and expenses, Invoice1Pro.net provides digital tools for scheduling work, remembering customer appointments, creating estimates and invoices, recording finances, and managing important business information. Technology replaced the long wooden pole, but reliability remains just as important today as it was on those dark streets more than a century ago. Today, waking up requires nothing more than setting an alarm on a phone. But for decades, arriving at work on time depended on another person walking through freezing streets in complete darkness, carrying a pole several meters long. It may have looked like a simple job, but factories, workers, and entire families depended on it. Looking back, we see that the knocker-upper was a symbol of an era where human effort was the primary engine of society. They were the bridge between the pre-industrial past and the modern automated future. We often romanticize the past, forgetting the grit and the cold, but there is a profound dignity in the work they performed. They were the invisible workforce that ensured the visible world could function. They understood that time was not just a number on a dial, but a series of commitments made to others. Every tap on a window was a promise kept, a contract fulfilled, and a life supported. They held the schedules of their neighbors in their minds, navigating the dark with the weight of their community's livelihood resting on their shoulders. In our current age of instant notifications and digital synchronization, we have lost that intimate human link to the start of our day. We rely on algorithms and satellites to keep us on track, forgetting that for over 100 years, our ancestors relied on the footsteps of a neighbor who cared enough to show up. The knocker-upper reminds us that no matter how much technology evolves, the core of a functioning society is still built upon the reliability of individuals. We still need to manage our time, we still need to fulfill our obligations, and we still need to ensure that the work we do matters to the people we serve. The systems may be different, but the fundamental requirement of being dependable remains the bedrock of any successful endeavor. As the fog clears from the mental image of those Victorian streets, one cannot help but wonder about the quiet pride of the knocker-upper. Did they feel the weight of the city waking up because of them? Did they take satisfaction in the sight of the factory lights flickering on, knowing they had played their part in the great machine of industry? They were the silent architects of the morning, the keepers of the schedule, and the guardians of the dawn. Their legacy is not found in grand monuments or historical statues, but in the very concept of punctuality that we take for granted today. They taught us that time is precious, that it must be respected, and that there is a profound value in being the person who ensures that others are ready to face the day. We live in a world that is obsessed with efficiency, yet we often struggle to maintain the very organization that makes efficiency possible. We have replaced the knocker-upper with digital calendars and automated alerts, yet the anxiety of being late or forgetting a responsibility remains a universal human experience. The tools we use now are vastly more sophisticated, allowing us to manage complex businesses and personal finances with a clarity that the knocker-upper could never have dreamed of. Yet, the heart of the matter remains unchanged. We are all trying to navigate our own routes, manage our own lists, and make sure that we are ready when the day begins. Whether we are waking up to a phone alarm or walking through the fog with a long pole, we are all part of the same human story of time, responsibility, and the constant effort to keep our commitments. As we reflect on this forgotten profession, we must consider the nature of the trust we place in others and the systems we use to govern our own lives. We have moved from a society of manual reminders to a society of digital integration, but the importance of that transition lies in how we manage our own personal and professional worlds. If alarm clocks and phones did not exist, would you trust a stranger to tap on your bedroom window every morning? Would you be willing to pay for the peace of mind that comes with knowing you will be ready for the day? Or would you find the intrusion of a stranger's hand on your window to be an unbearable violation of your private space? The knocker-upper was a product of a specific time and a specific need, but the questions they raise about accountability, service, and the human cost of punctuality are timeless. They serve as a reminder that we are all in our own way, responsible for the wakefulness of those around us, and that the simple act of showing up is perhaps the most important work of all. In the end, the history of the knocker-upper is a story about the fragility of time and the strength of the people who helped us master it, one tap at a time, through the long, dark, and industrious nights of our collective past. It is a story that continues to resonate every time we set an alarm, check a schedule, or prepare for the day ahead, knowing that we are building our own future on the foundations laid by those who walked the streets long before us. We are the inheritors of their discipline, the beneficiaries of their labor, and the custodians of a time that they fought so hard to keep. As the echoes of their footsteps fade into the annals of history, we are left with the quiet realization that the modern world, with all its bells and whistles, still depends on the same simple human virtue that kept the mills of Britain turning, the commitment to be exactly where you need to be, when you need to be there.